Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Darren Aronofsky's new movie, Caught Stealing. The movie follows Henry, who's portrayed in this movie by Austin Butler in this movie, who is, at one point was a baseball player but is now a bartender after a car accident. After looking after the cat of Ross, being portrayed by Matt Smith, he, unbeknownst to him, is pretty much followed right up with criminal gangsters, pretty much all after what Ross has in his possession, and after Henry equates the said little device, pretty much the entire mob world, or a small section of the mob world, is pretty much after him to essentially gather what has Ross left up in store while doing some cat sitting. Based off a novel by Charlie Huston, who wrote the screenplay of this movie, it was a very surprising fact that Darren Aronofsky is going to direct a comedy in this movie, or a crime comedy, as to say it more politely. For the works of Darren Aronofsky, his works were very intense to the point him directing comedy was very surprising for me, at least, as in he directed films like Pi, Requiem for a Dream, Mother, Black Swan, and Whale, and of course Fountain, Wrestler, as in movies that are somewhat therapeutic, or films that will send you to therapy, at least, to a point where comedy may not be in his little foray or in his little plateau of his filmography, to say least. But here we are with Matt Smith, Austin Butler, Bad Bunny, and Zoe Kravitz, and Regina King, with already a pretty big cast and a really high energy film, to say least. But we'll just see how the rest of the film just goes. Already saying this off the bat, well, literal baseball bat, the soundtrack in this movie is actually really good. Like, it has Scorpion, Rock You Like a Hurricane in this movie, and of course stuff like Ray of Light from Madonna, I'm Afraid of Americans from David Bowie, and also a song I'm very surprised that it didn't make it into the cut, being Wandering Star from Portishead, due to how very ethereal, dreamlike this song is. And of course, knowing the movie takes place in the late 90s, it definitely does make sense for all these songs to essentially make it into that playlist. And also, a huge props to Idols, which is a Bristol punk band, which I like. I even have the vinyl for Joy is an Act of Resilience. As in, the music was done by a band behind this little beauty, Idols, the album being Joy is an Act of Resilience. As in, they do this song being Run Rabbit Run, which is such a complete banger of a song that I stay during the credits just to pretty much soak in the song, as it has the really raw, pretty like heavy energy, like really heavy stuff that something like this album has. Like, if you haven't heard this album, please check it out. My favourite song off this album is probably I'm Scum, or something like Never Fire a Man with a Pram. Sorry, my favourite song was in an acronym, like Never Fire a Man with a Pram. Yeah, or Concrete to Leather, as it's more commonly known. They do a cover of Police and Thieves in the Streets by Julian Marvin, which is a reggae song I really like. So, again, I can't remember at the top of my head how well known he does in the like song soundtrack Darren Aronofsky, but his other stuff like soundtracks like The Fountain and Requiem for Dreams have very famous themes altogether. Like, The Fountain has the theme being officially called Death is the Road to R. And I can't remember what the Requiem for a Dream theme was, but I did remember it was used for one of the Lord of the Rings trailer, so there's that for you. And to introduce a very weird, very wonderful cast of characters in this movie, we have Austin Butler, who plays Henry Thompson, who's basically a former baseball player after a car accident that killed his friend and had him with a serious knee injury. He pretty much became a bartender. But after a bit of a run-in with Russ, who we'll talk about later, and his cat that he looks after, he gets pretty much goes in headfirst into the crime world, well, pretty much unwillingly, after a bunch of Russian gangsters, Hebrew gangsters, and corrupt police officers, and of course some Puerto Rican mobsters pretty much come after him, basically to find some missing cash, because some things just completely went upside for Ross's end. And we also have Zoe Kravitz, who is also the girlfriend of Henry in this movie, but only in this movie relatively briefly, because spoiler. Regina King as Roman, as Detective Roman, who's basically a corrupt police officer who pretty much rings that if you've been paying attention to the first scene with her. And there's also Ross Binder, played by Doctor Who legend Matt Smith, who's basically a punk with like a massive Mohican, listens to loads of hardcore punk music from the 80s and 90s, and also has a massive wardrobe in his storage of like all the punk clothing. And he speaks in a very stereotypical British accent that's more stereotypical than my British accent, being like, "Oi, bottle of water, what's up, geezer, and what you do that for? I want to talk about Premier League, innit, mate?" Well, that feels weird, doing a British impression not by a British person being me, which feels really awkward now. Again, he's a really fun, really bizarre character. We also have the Dunker brothers, who are essentially part of the Jewish mafia in this movie, and they have, we'll just say, definitely supply of movies, really dark and not too acidic comedy in this movie, but some pretty dark comedy. We also have Bad Bunny, who's a really well-known reggae torn artist and very famous in the Spanish-speaking world as Colorado. Again, really good. Even though he's in the movie, again, relatively briefly, because spoiler. So, again, I could say the rest being that a lot of them are in this movie, but mostly them for a brief amount of time because spoilers. And good news for you cat lovers, the movie has Tonic, who plays Bud the cat. Like, the movie... Tonic has so much presence in that movie. Like, you can make it say that the movie is that Bud is the main character of the movie, besides Henry being portrayed by Austin Butler. As in, the movie is almost like centered around them, the cat. As in, every time the cat gets injured in any way by the mobsters, my blood somewhat boils because I always want the best to come out for Bud, and of course I want to see Bud pretty much. Take on all the bad guys, almost in an instrumental level, while Henry takes on all the heavy lifting, which again, thankfully the movie does, and of course, things do go well for Bud, of course, thankfully. Like I did say earlier, this is Darren Aronofsky's like first foray into comedy territory, but when you're talking about something like a cat and mouse chase movie, I think the closest thing that may go into that direction is probably his debut film Pi, which came out in 1998, ironically the same year where this film takes place. What's also interesting about the movie Pi, even though the movie is about a very socially anxious man who by accident pretty much breaks the Wall Street Code and everything just goes down from there, this one, it's again same concept of a man who pretty much gets in a little bit too deep and pretty much wants to dig his way out of it by any means necessary, which is again kind of almost tiptoeing on the same line as Pi, but with Caught Stealing, this is more of a dark comedy with its genre, and this one is about a well, for Pi, it's basically just anxiety fuel. Like I remember watching like over like around 10 years ago or something like that, and it was definitely one of the most intense films I've seen, even to this day. Pretty much about a mathematician who, again, finds a code to basically break the stock market, and of course, is in a lot of deep trouble because of it. So I recommend it though. When's all said and done, Caught Stealing, even though this is Darren Aronofsky's first entree into more comedic elements of his own career, but I feel like as a comedy it does pretty well, and the movie's very high energy, definitely really fast paced, and very definitely chaotic as well about what all goes down. And supporting cast, even though they are in the film for a varying degree of like screen time in this movie, I feel like Austin Butler definitely has a really great leading performance and definitely is really prominent in this movie. Matt Smith as well and Zoe Kravitz are all brilliant in this movie. And also shout out to Tonic the Cat, who's also really great in this movie, and so is Regina King and Bad Bunny, Levi Sharadir. Sorry if I mispronounced his name. But again, even the soundtrack in this movie is just absolutely banger after banger after banger after banger. Even the new stuff being Run Rabbit Run from Idols, which is again a really great way to end the movie. Pretty much still running on the movie's really sane and really chaotic and fast-paced tempo that is already set. And of course the credits in the movie is just completely mind-breaking as well. Particularly, like I said, I feel like for Caught Stealing, I'm feeling a 7 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of caught stealing? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and Letterboxd, and dislike rolls. And